Well, this is partly a spin-off from the work I did combining the London Pronunciation Dictionary, where I was worried by the fact that there are many words in English which have disputed or varying pronunciations, and I wanted to have something more than my own personal preferences to go on. So I conducted a survey of pronunciation preferences. The crude percentage figures for all the people in the survey are presented in the dictionary, but what I've done since then is analyze these responses in terms of the age of the respondent. So you will find in the dictionary, for example, for the word zebra or zebra, that 83% prefer zebra, 17% prefer zebra. Now I'd love to see how those are distributed by age. The respondents numbered 275 speakers of British English. They were drawn in equal numbers from the north and south of England, with small numbers of Welsh and Scottish people. Most of them were professionally concerned with speech in one way or another, being academic phoneticians and linguists, teachers, university students, captive audience, radio announcers, or speech scientists and engineers. But over a quarter were volunteers who responded to an invitation in a Sunday newspaper, and many of them came by invitation from other people who were themselves interested in doing it. Now, one of the things that struck me straight away when I started doing this is that some of the responses showed absolutely no age grading, and we have here an example. That 60% line reflects whether people prefer chrysanthemum with a voiceless fricative or chrysanthemum with a voiced one. And it was steady across all age groups that about 3 out of 5 prefer the S and 2 out of 5 prefer the Z. So we seem now to have a steady state in England where we've got two pronunciations, neither of which is gaining or losing at the expense of the other. The other line, on the other hand, shows the word usage or usage, where this reflects the proportion who preferred usage, voiceless fricative, and you will see that that increases steadily by age, so that for the oldest group of speakers it was a minority preference. Most of them still wanted usage, but the younger you were, the more likely you were to prefer usage. So it's these responses that differ with age that I'm now concentrating on. There are 3 typical cases of words where there's fairly sharp age grading. The green line represents the rise of nephew at the expense of neveu, neveu being the traditional pronunciation, borrowing from French neveu after all, but nephew no doubt supported by the spelling. Now, we know that Americans overwhelmingly say nephew, so a starting hypothesis is that this reflects the Americanization of British pronunciation, and we're merely following American preferences. And that's supported by all 3 that we see on this particular graph. The dotted brown line is the rise of suit as against suit, traditional British or RP suit, giving way to suit, which is very nearly unanimously the preference of the youngest generation. And the solid red line represents issue with or without a yod, taking over from issue, the older pronunciation. So that looks in each case as if that's American influence. The top line here, I don't have any real data about American English, but certainly we've got a clear change in British English where the older form deity has given way to deity, and for the youngest generation it's unanimously the preference deity for deity. We don't know why that change has taken place. It seems to have extended to 1 or 2 similar words like spontaneity, heterogeneity, but I don't know why. The blue line represents the past tense of eat, going from traditional British et towards the American style ate. And for the younger generation, that has now become the preferred form. The red line shows traditional British patriotic giving way to American patriotic or patriotic. Well, that's still a minority form for everybody, but I think the Scud missiles, the Patriot missiles, may increase the slope of that line. That's an event that's happened since I carried out a survey. So there's a nice hypothesis that it's all Americanization. Unfortunately, if we look at further data, that's clearly not true. Here, the green line at the top is the one I started with, zebra or zebra. Now, Americans say zebra. Brits increasingly prefer zebra. And for the youngest generation, it's almost solid in favour of zebra. Zebra for us is now an older people's pronunciation. So that shows that, at least in that word, we're not following the American trend. Similarly, the blue line represents the movement away from poor towards poor, as the opposite of rich, so that it then becomes the same as when you pour something out. And again, that's a movement away from American English, where those words would normally be distinguished, except perhaps in the South. And so we're moving, in a way, away from American English. The red line is a change that has no parallel, as far as I know, in American English, where before L and a voiceless consonant, we're moving from or to o, so that traditional RP salt is giving way to salt. It also is found in one or two words like false becoming false. Well, there for reference is chrysanthemum again, and that is the sharpest age grading I found in any word. That's the word that I call delirious, thereby revealing my belonging to the older generation, because the younger generation like to call this word delirious. Against the spelling, against the history, I have no idea why this change should have taken place. It seems to be a one-off. There are no other comparable words. People don't say spirit instead of spirit, but they certainly do prefer delirious and delirium, increasingly so, particularly younger people. And again, that's contrary to anything that's happening in American English, where that sort of wouldn't happen. Here are some stress ones. Now, the general trend in English stress changes is towards placing the stress later in the word, it seems to me. The green line represents the move from applicable to applicable. The younger you are in Britain, the more likely you are to prefer applicable. The dotted blue line is the movement from controversy towards controversy. There's a dip in that. This, I think, is because of the presence of a large number of radio announcers in that age group. And BBC radio announcers are explicitly trained that they must say controversy and not controversy. It's something that should have been, and that's biased. This was one of the only two words that revealed a correlation with speakers' profession or occupation. The other one was research versus research, which was associated with being a university academic. The red line is formidable, giving way to formidable. Quite a sharp line again. Here are some that support the claim that we're moving in the direction of American English. Dotted blue is kilometre, giving way to the illogical but American kilometre. Sorry, that's the green line. The dotted blue line is primarily, giving way to primarily, or in some cases primarily, but anyhow stressed other than on the first syllable. And the red line is harass, giving way to harass. Well, now, one of my graduate students has now been carrying out a similar survey, but of American pronunciation preferences. This enables us to compare what we find in Britain and what we find in America. There is a stress change from formidable to formidable. And you can see there that the Brits are in the lead with this one, and the Americans are following along. We're all moving towards formidable, but the Brits are nearly there, the Americans are a long way away still. On the other hand, in harass giving way to harass, American harass giving way to harass, we've got the Americans in the lead and the Brits following after. Quite sharply and quite firmly so. Some people, of course, reported there that there was a difference according to meaning, that you don't harass any man would be different from an army harassing the enemy. And as a suitable last example, there is the word exquisite becoming exquisite, where you'll see that British and American English are nicely hand in hand, moving at almost exactly the same speed in the same direction in the two countries. And to show that we're even converging where both of us change, there is either and either, where you'll notice that the so-called American pronunciation either is gaining ground in Britain, whereas the so-called British pronunciation either is gaining ground in America. While we still, on the whole, prefer our national versions of them, we're becoming more exposed to outside influences. Thank you. not in those. No, I certainly checked them.
Yeah, Bob Boersma, Amsterdam. What do you think that the younger people will do when they will get popular? Will they
That is the big question, whether this is to do with the speaker's age at the time or whether it's because of changes in the language. I hope to be able to carry out another survey in, well, 5 years from now, which will be 10 years from that one, and every 10 years, this is as long as I live, and maybe we'll then be able to get an answer to that.
So you didn't compare to data written down in 1930s or so?
Unfortunately, there's no such data available, as far as I know, before I did.
Chechnya and Chechnya, as I live in Israel, I've been able to compare them on the World Service Television and Sky. It seemed to me it was a class difference more than an age difference. Chechnya being the Sky pronunciation and Chechnya.
I think that's much too small a sample to take just 2 radio stations.
Do you think there are any word frequency effects? Like the word formidable just not used that frequently in American English. It seems the ones that showed the most change were words that were becoming.
Well, the only word familiarity effects that I could detect were hesitancy. I got an uncertain answer or no answer to words that are less common, which perhaps some of my informants therefore didn't know or weren't familiar with. That obviously is a possible factor.
Delirious. That seems to go in line with other words in Nereus, serious and so on.
Well, indeed, yes.
There are very few words in English with a short E.
That's right. That's the only possible explanation, mysterious and serious. Yeah. But there are words like spirit that have not quite the same. Yes. But no other Irius words. There's the name of the star, Sirius, that's the only one, which of course constitutes the minimal pair with